Rain always sounded different out there, not the soft kind that taps against windows in the city. This rain felt heavier, older somehow, like the sky was trying to bury the road beneath it one drop at a time. I remember driving with both hands locked to the steering wheel, watching my headlights disappear into walls of fog that rolled low across the asphalt like pale smoke. The forest on both sides of the road looked endless. Black trees, wet bark, branches bending in the wind like thin arms reaching toward the car. Every few miles, a dying street lamp buzzed overhead, flickering weakly before fading back into darkness. The radio kept slipping into static. Sometimes, beneath the crackling sound, I thought I could hear breathing. I told myself it was exhaustion. The clock on the dashboard had frozen at 2:13 a.m. nearly an hour earlier. My phone had no signal. Even worse, I couldn't remember the last town I passed through. It felt like the road had quietly swallowed the world behind me. Then I saw something standing near the tree line. Tall, still, not quite human. Its eyes caught the headlights for only a second before it stepped deeper into the rain. I should have kept driving. I know that now, but something about the way it moved made my stomach turn cold, because whatever I saw out there was waiting for me further down the road. The storm had been following me for hours. Midnight had already slipped past. The highway stretched ahead in a thin ribbon of wet black pavement, cutting through endless pine forest. Tall trees crowded both sides of the road, their dark trunks disappearing into sheets of rain and drifting fog. The wipers swept back and forth, a steady rhythm, rubber against glass, rain against metal. The heater pushed warm air across my hands, but the damp smell of wet pine still lingered inside the car. I hadn't seen another vehicle in nearly an hour. No headlights, no taillights, just darkness. Then I saw the mile marker. The old sign leaned slightly beside the road, weathered and stained from years of storms. And standing beside it was a figure, tall, perfectly still. The rain poured over its shape, but it never moved. At first I thought it was a person. Maybe someone stranded. Maybe someone waiting for help. But something felt wrong. The figure seemed too tall, too narrow. Its arms hung strangely at its sides. I slowed slightly as I passed. The headlights swept over it. For a brief moment, pale light touched the shape. Then it vanished behind me. I checked the mirror. Nothing. Only darkness and rain. I told myself I had imagined it. The storm was exhausting. The road was empty. My eyes were tired. So I kept driving. The forest continued. The rain grew heavier. Fog drifted low across the pavement. Several miles later, another mile marker appeared. My stomach tightened. The same figure stood beside it, waiting, motionless. Rain streamed down its body. The headlights dimmed slightly. Not enough to notice immediately, just enough to feel. The road ahead became darker. The figure remained still as I approached. Again I passed it. Again I checked the mirror. Nothing. The darkness swallowed everything. I gripped the steering wheel harder. The heater hummed softly. Static crackled from the radio speakers. Outside, pine branches swayed and rustled beneath the storm. I drove faster. Another few miles passed. The road curved through the forest. Then another marker appeared. The figure was there again. Closer this time. Much closer. Standing only a few feet from the pavement. My pulse quickened. The headlights dimmed the moment I saw it. The bright beams faded into weak yellow light. The dashboard flickered. For a second, I thought the battery was failing. But the lights returned the instant the figure disappeared behind me. I swallowed hard. Cold air seemed to leak through the doors. The smell of wet earth filled the car. And for the first time, I stopped looking in the mirrors. I didn't want to know if something was following me. The rain continued. Endless. Heavy. The forest never changed. Tree after tree. Shadow after shadow. Then something appeared ahead, lying in the middle of the highway. I slammed the brakes. The tires hissed against the soaked pavement. The car stopped only a few feet away. A deer, or what was left of one. Its body was torn open, ribs exposed. Dark blood mixed with rainwater and flowed into the roadside ditch. Steam rose from the carcass, thin white wisps twisting into the cold air. I stared through the windshield. The animal should have been cold, The storm had been raging for hours, yet heat still drifted from its body. Fresh, recent, the smell reached me even through the closed windows. Metallic, wet, wrong. For several moments, I simply sat there, listening. Rain tapped against the roof. The engine idled softly. Far away, thunder rolled beyond the trees. Then the headlights dimmed again, slowly, like someone covering them with a hand. A chill crawled up my spine. I looked toward the shoulder of the road. Nothing. Only fog. Only rain. Then lightning flashed. For a fraction of a second, the forest became bright as daylight. And between the trees, I saw the figure, watching, closer than before, far too close. Its shape stood among the pines, half hidden behind dripping branches. Tall, unmoving, silent, the darkness returned immediately. My breath caught in my throat. I shifted into gear and drove around the deer. The tires splashed through red-stained water. I didn't look back. Not once. The storm seemed louder now, the forest tighter, the road narrower. Every mile marker that followed made my chest feel heavier, because I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. The figure wasn't appearing ahead of me. It wasn't waiting beside random markers. It was moving. Somehow, each time I saw it, the distance between us had grown smaller, and no matter how fast I drove through the rain and darkness, it was getting closer. The headlights dimmed again, just for a moment, then returned. Ahead, the highway disappeared into fog. Behind me, only darkness remained. But deep down, beneath the hum of the engine and the endless rain, I had the uneasy feeling that something was now standing on the road somewhere behind the car, watching, waiting, and no longer very far away. The storm never eased. Rain followed me through the rest of the night, drumming against the roof and streaking across the windshield in endless silver lines. The forest remained on both sides of the highway, dark, silent, watching. I kept driving, partly because I wanted distance between myself and mile marker 14, partly because I couldn't shake the feeling that stopping would somehow make things worse. The headlights cut through the rain. The engine hummed steadily beneath me, and for nearly 2 hours, nothing changed. Then I saw the gas station. Its sign appeared through the fog like a fading memory. A weak yellow glow stood among the trees ahead. The sight of light felt comforting, almost unreal. I hadn't seen a building since sunset. The station sat alone beside the highway. One pump, one small building, a flickering open sign hanging inside the window. I pulled beneath the canopy. Rain hammered the metal roof overhead. The pumps looked old. Paint peeled from their sides. Water pooled around cracked concrete. Yet every light was on. Someone had to be there. I stepped out. Cold rain soaked my jacket immediately. The air smelled of gasoline and wet pine needles. A loose wire somewhere above clicked softly in the wind. I hurried inside. The doorbell chimed. The warmth surprised me. Coffee filled the room with a rich, bitter smell. Fresh coffee. Not old. Not forgotten. Fresh. A steaming pot sat behind the counter. Half full, the surface still rippled with heat. I waited for someone to appear. No one did. The shelves remained stocked. Candy bars, maps, bottled drinks. Everything looked normal, except for the silence. No radio, no television, no voices, only the distant hum of a generator somewhere behind the building. I called out, "Hello." My voice sounded strange, small. The empty station swallowed it whole. No answer came back. I walked behind the counter. The office door stood open. The chair was pushed away from the desk, as if someone had stood up only moments ago. A cup sat beside scattered paperwork. Still warm. I could feel it. The clerk should have been there. Someone should have been there. Instead, the building felt abandoned, as though every person inside had quietly disappeared at the exact same moment. A cold unease settled into my stomach. I grabbed a paper cup and poured coffee. The warmth felt good against my hands. For a moment, I simply stood there listening. The generator hummed steadily outside. Rain rattled against the windows. Then I noticed the security monitors. For screens glowed softly in the corner. They showed different angles around the station. The pumps, the parking area, the road, the store itself. My eyes drifted toward the monitor displaying the front counter. I froze. The cup nearly slipped from my hand. The screen showed me standing beside the coffee machine, exactly where I was. But someone stood directly behind me, tall, motionless. Its head nearly touched the ceiling. I spun around. Nothing, only empty aisles. Candy racks. The humming cooler. No figure. No movement. My heart pounded against my ribs. Slowly, I looked back at the monitor. The figure was gone. Only my own reflection remained. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Rainwater dripped from my sleeves onto the floor. The coffee suddenly smelled sour. Something about the room felt different now. Smaller, tighter, as if the walls had shifted while I wasn't paying attention. I decided to leave. Immediately, I walked quickly toward the exit. The bell chimed again as I stepped outside. Cold rain greeted me. Fresh air filled my lungs. For a moment, I felt relieved. Then I saw the mud. Footprints surrounded my car. Hundreds of them. Dark prints pressed into the wet ground. They circled the vehicle over and over, round and round, some close to the doors, others farther away. Each print looked fresh. Rainwater still pooled inside them. I stared at them in disbelief. No one had been there when I arrived. No person could have walked around the car that many times without me noticing. The circles overlapped until they became nearly impossible to count. A knot formed in my chest. The forest beyond the station seemed darker now. The trees stood motionless despite the storm, watching, waiting. I hurried back toward the building. The generator's hum drifted through the rain. Low, constant, comforting, at least at first. Then the tone changed. Subtly, almost too slowly to notice. The hum deepened, stretched, shifted. I stopped walking. Rain soaked my hair and face. The noise no longer sounded mechanical. It sounded human. Whispers. Dozens of voices speaking at once. Too quiet to understand. Too close to ignore. The words blended together beneath the storm. Soft murmurs. Breathing. Fragments of sentences. The voices seemed to rise directly from the generator itself. My skin prickled. I backed away. The whispers followed, growing slightly clearer. Not enough to understand. Just enough to feel like they were discussing something important. Something about me. The station lights flickered. Once, twice. The voices stopped. Instantly, silence rushed in. Even the rain seemed quieter. I climbed into my car and locked the doors. The interior felt colder than before. The windshield fogged immediately from my breath. For a moment, I sat there staring at the station. The coffee cup trembled in my hand. Everything looked normal again. Just an old gas station in the middle of nowhere. Yet I couldn't forget the monitor, or the footprints, or the voices hiding inside that endless hum. I started the engine. The headlights illuminated the road ahead. As I pulled away, I glanced into the rearview mirror. The station stood alone among the trees. Its lights flickered softly through the rain. And just before the forest swallowed it completely, I thought I saw a tall silhouette standing beneath the canopy, perfectly still, watching my car disappear into the darkness. The rain continued. The highway stretched onward. And for the first time all night, I found myself wishing I had never stopped at all. The rain followed me deeper into the forest, hour after hour. The highway wound through dark hills and endless pines while clouds pressed low against the treetops. I kept driving until exhaustion became impossible to ignore. My eyes burned. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. The gas station felt far behind me now, yet the memory of the security monitor refused to leave. Near midnight, I pulled onto a gravel turnout beside the road. A rusted sign leaned near the trees. Most of its lettering had long since faded away. The place looked forgotten, but it was dry enough to stop. For a little while, the storm pounded the roof as I reclined the seat. The heater hummed softly. Fog collected around the windows. Outside, the forest vanished behind curtains of rain. I told myself I would only rest for an hour, maybe two. Then I closed my eyes. The next thing I knew, I was awake. A strange pressure sat in my chest, the kind that arrives before fear fully forms. The dashboard clock glowed faintly. 3:02 a.m. For a few seconds, I lay still, listening. Rain tapped against the glass. Wind whispered through the trees. Everything seemed normal. Then something stepped onto the roof. A heavy thump echoed above me. Metal groaned softly. I froze. Another step followed. Slow, deliberate. The roof dipped slightly overhead. The sound moved from the rear of the car toward the windshield. Thump. A pause. Thump. The metal creaked beneath the weight. Whatever stood above me was large. Far larger than any animal I could imagine climbing onto a car. My breath became shallow. I stared upward. The dark ceiling gave away nothing. Only occasional vibrations passed through the frame. The footsteps continued. Measured. Patient. Almost curious. Each one pressed deeper into the roof. The steel complained quietly beneath it. I reached for my phone. The screen illuminated the interior with pale blue light. No signal. Of course. Only darkness waited beyond the fog windows. The footsteps stopped directly above my seat. Silence followed. A deep silence. Heavy. Listening. The rain suddenly felt distant. I could hear my own heartbeat. The faint ticking of cooling metal. Then a long scrape dragged across the roof. Slowly. As if something enormous was running its hand over the car. The noise sent a chill through every part of me. I switched off the phone immediately. Darkness returned. The thing above remained still. Waiting. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. Time no longer felt reliable. Eventually the weight shifted. The footsteps resumed. Thump, thump, thump. They moved toward the front of the vehicle. Then stopped again. Near the windshield. I stared through the fog glass. At first, I saw nothing. Only rainwater sliding downward in silver trails. Then the fog changed. A clear patch slowly formed near the passenger side, as though something warm stood just outside, watching. My throat tightened. The clear patch grew larger. Condensation vanished inch by inch. Then I heard breathing. Deep, animal, wet. The exhale spread across the glass. Only inches away. The fog trembled. I could almost feel the warmth through the windshield, but I couldn't see what was making it. The darkness outside remained too thick. The forest hid everything. Another breath followed, longer this time. The glass vibrated slightly. I sat perfectly still, afraid that even the smallest movement might draw attention. The breathing continued for what felt like forever. Then it stopped, without warning. The pressure outside disappeared. Silence returned. Slowly, the rain reclaimed the windshield. The clear patch faded. Fog spread across the glass once more. The footsteps never returned. Neither did the breathing. Eventually, exhaustion overcame fear. Not enough to sleep. Only enough to wait for dawn. The hours crawled past. Gray light finally emerged beyond the trees. Morning arrived hidden beneath thick clouds. The storm weakened slightly. I unlocked the door and stepped outside. Cold air filled my lungs. The roof immediately caught my attention. Several deep dents stretched across the metal. A trail. Each impression looked like something heavy had walked from one end of the vehicle to the other. My stomach dropped. Then I noticed the hood. 5 enormous handprints covered the wet surface. Not paw prints. Not footprints. Handprints. Each one far larger than my head. Rainwater pooled inside the impressions. The fingers were impossibly long. For several moments, I simply stared. The forest stood silent around me. Mist drifted between the trees. Nothing moved. Nothing watched. At least, nothing I could see. Yet as I climbed back into the car, one thought lingered quietly in the back of my mind. Whatever had stood above me during the night, it had not slipped. It had not searched. It had not attacked. It had simply walked across the roof, as though it already knew exactly where I was. The storm weakened by morning, but it never truly left. Clouds still hung low above the forest. Rain drifted through the trees in soft gray curtains. The road stretched endlessly ahead, empty, silent. I drove for most of the day without seeing another traveler. The giant handprints remained fresh in my memory. Every time I glanced at the dented roof through the windshield reflection, my stomach tightened. Something had found me during the night, something impossibly large. And deep down, I feared it was still nearby. By late afternoon, the rain returned. The forest thickened. Floodwater gathered in ditches along both sides of the road. Brown water rushed beneath tangled roots and fallen branches. The air smelled of wet bark and cold earth. That was when I saw the deer. It stood beside a flooded ditch about 50 yards ahead. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Deer were common in these woods. But as I approached, a strange feeling settled over me. The animal wasn't standing the way it should. I slowed the car. Rain tapped softly against the windshield. The deer remained perfectly still, and then I realized why. It was standing upright, not rearing, not rising briefly. Standing, balanced on its hind legs. Its front legs hung awkwardly against its chest. Its body remained completely vertical, like a person waiting beside the road. A cold knot formed in my stomach. The creature slowly turned its head toward me. Its eyes reflected pale white. Not yellow, not green. White, like distant stars trapped in side glass. The deer didn't run. It didn't flinch. Most wild animals vanished the moment a vehicle approached. This one simply watched. Rain poured over its fur. Water streamed from its antlers. Yet it never blinked, never moved. For several long seconds, we stared at each other. Then I drove away. The image stayed with me. Those pale eyes, that unnatural posture, that impossible stillness. Hours passed. Evening arrived. Dark clouds swallowed the remaining daylight. I found a roadside motel shortly after sunset. The building looked old but occupied. A faded neon sign buzzed weakly near the entrance. The room smelled damp, like old wood and wet soil. Still, it offered shelter, and after everything I had experienced, shelter felt good enough. Rain tapped against the windows while darkness settled outside. The forest stood only a short distance behind the motel. Dense pines crowded the rear edge of the property. Their shadows blended together beneath the storm. I tried reading, tried watching television. Neither helped. My attention kept drifting toward the window, toward the trees, toward the darkness. Around midnight, I finally switched off the lamp. The room fell quiet. Only rain remained. A soft, endless rhythm against the glass. Then another noise joined it, a faint scrape. I opened my eyes. The sound came again, slow, gentle, dragging across the window. I sat upright. The room felt colder now. The scrape repeated. My pulse quickened. Carefully, I looked toward the glass. A shape stood outside, tall, motionless. For one terrible second, I thought the figure from the highway had found me again. Then lightning flashed. The pale light revealed antlers. The deer stood beside the motel window, still upright, still watching. Rainwater streamed down its body. Its white eyes reflected the storm, and one antler dragged softly across the glass. Scrape, pause, scrape. The sound barely rose above the rain, yet felt unbearable. The deer never blinked, never moved closer. It simply watched, as if waiting for something, or remembering something. I couldn't look away. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The storm continued beyond the room. The forest swayed gently behind the creature. Finally, another flash of lightning filled the night. For a moment, the window became bright. When darkness returned, the deer was gone. The space outside stood empty. Only rain remained. Only trees. Only shadows. I stayed awake until dawn, watching the glass, listening, waiting for the scraping to return. It never did. But even after sunrise touched the forest, I couldn't shake a growing feeling. The deer wasn't following me. The figure wasn't following me. The handprints on the car weren't separate events. Somehow, they all belonged to the same road, the same storm, the same endless forest. And with every mile I traveled, it felt less like I was passing through that place and more like it was slowly closing around me. Morning arrived hidden behind clouds. The storm lingered over the forest like a living thing. Rain drifted through the trees. Mist hovered above the highway. Everything smelled of wet earth and pine sap. I left the motel shortly after sunrise. The deer was gone. No tracks remained outside the window. No sign that it had ever been there. Only the memory of pale eyes staring through rain-covered glass. For several hours, the drive remained uneventful. The road stretched through rolling hills and dark woods. The radio produced little more than static. The forest never seemed to end. Then I saw the detour sign, bright orange, freshly standing beside the highway. A large arrow pointed toward a narrow road disappearing into the trees. The main highway ahead appeared blocked by construction barriers. At least, that was what it looked like through the rain. I slowed, checked my GPS. The map showed no alternate route, just the highway continuing forward. Still, the barriers looked real. The detour looked official. So I turned. The moment my tires crossed onto the side road, the GPS froze. The screen stopped updating. The arrow marking my location vanished. A loading symbol appeared. Then nothing. I tapped the screen. No response. The map remained frozen. A strange unease settled over me. The road narrowed quickly. Trees crowded close on both sides. Branches brushed against one another overhead. Rain tapped softly against the roof. The farther I drove, the darker the forest became. Eventually, I noticed the first abandoned vehicle. An old pickup truck sat beside the road. Its windows were broken. Moss covered most of the body. Small plants grew through the rusted frame. It looked as though it had rested there for decades. A mile later, I found another. Then another. Cars, trucks, even an old camper. All abandoned. All swallowed by moss and vines. None looked recently deserted. Yet none appeared on my map. The feeling of isolation deepened. The road twisted through the forest endlessly. Then something changed. The rain became silent. Not lighter, not weaker. Silent. I could still see droplets striking the windshield. Still see water running across the glass. But I couldn't hear it. The wipers moved soundlessly. The tires rolled without noise. Even the engine seemed distant, as if a thick blanket had been pulled over the world. I rolled down the window, slightly. Cold air rushed inside. The rain touched my hand, yet no sound followed. Nothing. The silence felt impossible. Wrong. My chest tightened. I raised the window again. The silence remained. The forest looked different now. Older somehow. The trees seemed larger. The shadows deeper. I focused on the road ahead. That was when I saw movement. Far ahead, something enormous passed between the trees. My breath caught. At first, I only saw part of it. A dark shape moving behind the trunks. Too large to be a bear. Too tall to be any animal I knew. The tops of young pines bent slightly as it moved. Then it vanished behind thicker forest. I slowed instinctively. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. The thing never stepped onto the road. Never fully revealed itself. Yet I knew it was there, keeping pace, watching. The silence around me only made it worse. Minutes later, the road curved sharply. A broken bridge appeared ahead. The wooden structure crossed a swollen river. Half of it had collapsed into the rushing water below. The path ended there. I sighed with relief. At least I could turn around. I carefully reversed direction and drove back the way I had come. Or so I thought. 20 minutes later, the same bridge appeared again. The same broken boards. The same collapsed section. The same river. I stopped the car. Rain slid down the windshield in complete silence. Confusion settled over me. Had I taken a wrong turn? There had been no intersections. No side roads. Only one path. I turned around again. Drove for another half hour. The bridge returned. Exactly the same. Waiting. A cold fear spread through my chest. I tried different speeds, different directions. Nothing changed. The road always led back to the bridge. Again, and again, and again. The GPS remained frozen. The forest remained silent. The abandoned vehicles continued appearing beside the road, like markers left behind by travelers who had once made the same mistake. Eventually, I parked near the bridge. The rain continued falling without a voice. Mist drifted above the river below. The trees stood motionless beneath gray skies. And somewhere deep within the forest, beyond the reach of sight, I thought I saw something massive shifting between the trunks, waiting patiently, as if it already knew I wasn't leaving any time soon. The forest road stretched endlessly ahead. Rain drifted through the darkness in silver sheets. The headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the storm, while the trees stood motionless beyond the shoulder. I had finally escaped the looping bridge. At least I thought I had. The GPS still refused to work. The screen remained frozen. A single blinking cursor sat in the corner like it was waiting for something. The radio produced little more than static. Soft crackling, faint hissing, background noise to keep the silence away. Then a voice emerged. So quiet I almost missed it. Mile marker 22. My hands tightened on the wheel. I looked ahead. A weathered sign passed through the headlights. The voice had spoken at first. The static returned. Then another whisper surfaced. Sharp curve ahead. A few moments later the road bent left. Cold unease settled into my chest. The voices knew where I was. They knew what was ahead. More whispers drifted through the radio. Some distant, some close enough to sound as if they sat beside me. Most were impossible to understand, until one finally became clear. Don't stop driving. The voice sounded terrified, breathless, as if speaking through panic. Don't stop driving. Again and again, the same warning repeated through bursts of static. Rain struck the windshield harder. The forest seemed darker. Then another voice appeared. Calm, steady, almost comforting. It spoke my name. The sound froze me. No hesitation. No mistake. My name. The calm voice repeated it once more. Then silence. The radio hissed softly. Lightning flashed beyond the trees. For a brief second, a tall figure stood beside the road, watching. The same impossible shape from the highway. The same motionless silhouette. Another flash illuminated it. Closer, its head tilted slightly. Then the radio crackled violently. A low chuckle emerged from the speakers. The figure smiled. I don't know how I knew it smiled. The darkness hid its face. Yet somehow I knew. The radio died instantly. No static. No voices. Nothing. Only rain. Only the hum of the engine. I drove through the rest of the night without turning the radio on again. But sometimes, when thunder rolled the forest, I could still hear that frightened voice somewhere beneath the storm. Don't stop driving. The storm worsened before sunset. Wind pushed rain sideways through the trees. The road became nearly impossible to see. When I spotted an old ranger cabin near the forest edge, I pulled over immediately. The structure looked abandoned. Weathered wood, a sagging porch, a rusted chimney leaning slightly toward the woods. But it offered shelter. Inside, the air smelled of damp pine and old smoke. Dust covered the floorboards. Yet the cabin felt strangely untouched, as if someone still visited occasionally. Night settled quickly. Rain hammered the roof overhead. The forest disappeared into darkness. Then a knock came at the door. 3 slow taps. I froze. The knock came again. When I opened the door, an elderly hunter stood outside. Rainwater dripped from a long coat. A lantern swung gently in one hand. His hat sat low over his face. Too low. I couldn't see his eyes. He stepped inside without invitation. The lantern cast warm golden light across the cabin walls. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Only the rain filled the silence. Finally, his voice emerged. Dry. Quiet. Don't look into the forest after midnight. That was all. No explanation. No warning beyond those words. He sat near the fireplace and stared downward. The brim of his hat never moved. His eyes remained hidden. Hours passed. The storm continued. The cabin groaned softly beneath the wind. Midnight arrived. Then the tapping started. Tiny knocks against the outer walls. Tap, 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 moving slowly around the cabin, as if someone walked outside while dragging their fingers along the wood. The hunter never reacted. He remained perfectly still. The tapping continued, circling, patient. Then lightning flashed. Instinctively, I glanced toward the window. For a split second, the forest became bright. Dozens of pale faces stood among the trees, motionless, watching. Another flash. More faces. Hundreds, perhaps, hidden between trunks and branches. Their skin looked almost white, their expressions empty. I jerked away from the window. My heart hammered against my ribs. The tapping stopped immediately. The cabin became silent. The hunter finally lifted his head slightly, just enough for me to notice the darkness beneath his hat. No eyes looked back at me, only shadow. By dawn, both the faces and the hunter were gone. The lantern remained beside the fireplace, still warm, yet no footprints led away from the cabin, only rain-soaked earth and endless forest. The road carried me deeper into the mountains. Fog rolled through the valleys, heavy, thick. The storm never truly left. Near evening, I found a narrow wooden bridge emerging from the mist. It stretched across what should have been a small river, yet the water below roared with impossible force. The current sounded deep, far deeper than the shallow stream shown on my old map. I stepped from the car. Cold air wrapped around me. The bridge creaked beneath each step. Fog swallowed both ends. Halfway across, I noticed muddy footprints. They covered the boards ahead. At first they seemed ordinary. Then I realized something was wrong. The footprints faced backward. Every print pointed toward where I had started, yet they continued away from me, as though someone had walked forward while facing behind them. A chill crawled through my body. The bridge trembled slightly. Something moved beneath it, a massive shape shifting through the darkness below. The water churned violently. The entire structure shook again. Rain pounded the boards, would groan beneath my feet. Then a long arm emerged over the railing, pale, thin, far too long to belong to any person. Its fingers curled around the wet wood. I ran. The bridge rocked violently beneath me. The fog thickened. The river roared below. For one terrible moment, I felt the arm reaching farther, stretching upward, searching. I reached the opposite side and never looked back. Even now, I remember the feeling of that bridge shaking beneath the storm, and the certainty that something enormous had been waiting beneath it. The storm followed me into another night. A nearly abandoned motel appeared beside the highway shortly after dark. Its neon sign flickered weakly through the rain. The owner handed me a key without speaking. When I asked about the forest behind the building, he simply looked away. The room smelled damp, old, like wet soil left untouched for years. A single window faced the woods. Beyond the glass stood a dense wall of trees illuminated by weak yellow lights mounted along the property line. I tried sleeping. The rain wouldn't allow it. Each hour, I found myself staring toward the window, watching, waiting. Around midnight, I noticed a silhouette near the trees. Tall, motionless, the familiar shape. By 1 o'clock, it stood closer. By 2, closer still, always watching, never moving while I looked directly at it. The motel owner refused to answer questions. When I knocked on his office door, he simply shut the curtain. The hours crawled forward. 3 o'clock, 4. The silhouette continued approaching. Slowly, patiently. The storm weakened near dawn. Exhaustion finally pulled me into a shallow sleep. When sunlight touched the curtains, I woke immediately. Mud covered the floor beside the bed. Fresh footprints stretched across the room, from the window to the bed, then back again. I left without checking out, without looking toward the woods one final time, because deep down I already knew what I might see. The breakdown happened shortly after sunset. Steam rose from beneath the hood. The car refused to start again. Rain poured from low black clouds. The nearest shelter was an isolated farmhouse, sitting alone beside a field. The front door stood unlocked. Inside, everything smelled of mildew and age. Water dripped somewhere below. Slow, steady, endless. The basement door sat at the end of the narrow hallway. Behind it came the sound of splashing footsteps. Not loud, not hurried, just slow movement through shallow water. I found an old tape recorder in the living room. Dust coated the buttons. The battery still worked. A trembling voice played from the speaker, a former resident. The recording spoke of something beneath the basement water, something that appeared whenever the rain lasted too long. The voice ended abruptly. Static filled the room. Night settled over the farmhouse. The dripping continued. The splashing continued. Then the basement door creaked open by itself. Only a few inches. Darkness waited beyond. Cold, damp air drifted into the hallway. I backed away. Wet handprints appeared along the walls. one after another, as if invisible hands pressed against the peeling wallpaper. Fresh water trickled downward from each mark. The splashing grew closer, slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs. I never waited to see what reached the top. I grabbed my keys and fled into the storm. Behind me, the farmhouse stood silent beneath the rain. Yet even from the road, I could see the basement door hanging open, and something pale standing just inside the darkness. The storm seemed endless now. Day and night blended together beneath low clouds and constant rain. The highway stretched through hills wrapped in fog. The forest never truly left. It followed beside the road like a living wall. I drove for hours after leaving the farmhouse. The image of the pale figure in the basement doorway lingered in my mind. Every reflection made me uneasy. Every shadow felt wrong. Near midnight, I glanced into the rearview mirror. Something moved behind the car, far down the road. At first, I thought it was another traveler, a distant shape illuminated by lightning. But there were no headlights, no vehicle, only a tall silhouette standing in the rain. The figure disappeared as the darkness returned. I kept driving. Several minutes later, lightning flashed again. The figure was closer, still standing in the center of the highway, still watching. Cold dread settled into my stomach. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The engine responded. The speed climbed. Rain streaked across the windshield. The forest blurred past. Yet every time lightning illuminated the road behind me, the figure had gained ground. Slowly, patiently, its limbs looked wrong. The arms seemed too long. The legs bent strangely, almost backward, like something pretending to walk the way people do. Thunder rolled through mountains. The mirror trembled slightly. I checked it again. Closer. The figure now occupied most of the road. Its movements appeared unnatural, jerking, stretching, covering impossible distances between flashes of light. My pulse hammered inside my ears. The speedometer continued climbing, yet the distance between us continued shrinking. Rainwater dripped from my sleeves. The heater hummed weakly. The inside of the car suddenly felt too small. Another flash. Closer. Another. Closer still. I could almost make out its face. Then the rear view mirror cracked. A sharp snap echoed inside the vehicle. A thin fracture spread across the glass. Then another, and another. The mirror shattered into a web of broken lines. I jerked my eyes away. My hands shook against the steering wheel. I never looked into the mirror again, not for the rest of the night, because I already knew what I would see. And deep down, I feared the creature no longer needed the road behind me. I feared it had already caught up. The mountain road carried me higher into the storm. Fog drifted between steep hills. Rain slid silently across the windshield. Near 3 a.m, I saw lights ahead. A town, small, hidden among the mountains. Warm yellow windows glowed through the mist. Relief washed over me. For the first time in days, I thought I had found somewhere normal, somewhere safe. The streets were empty. No cars moved. No people walked the sidewalks. Yet every house appeared occupied. Lights shone from living rooms. Curtains hung open. I could see dinner tables through the windows. Plates remained set. Chairs sat pulled back, as though families had stepped away only moments before. But nobody was there. The silence felt unnatural. The rain continued falling. I could see it striking the pavement. Yet I couldn't hear it. No thunder. No wind. Nothing. I parked beside a small church near the center of town. Mist curled around the buildings. The warm light suddenly felt less welcoming, more like stage props left behind after performance. I checked several homes. Each one looked lived in. Each one stood empty. Clocks ticked softly. Food sat untouched on tables. Beds remained neatly made. But no people existed anywhere. A chill spread through my chest. Then the church bell rang. One heavy note. The sound echoed across the silent town. I checked my watch. 3:13 a.m. The bell rang again, then stopped. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then every porch light turned off at once. The entire town plunged into darkness. The change was instant, absolute. My breath caught. The mist seemed thicker now. The empty houses vanished into shadow. The church stood silent, watching, waiting. I climbed back into the car and locked the doors. The darkness outside felt alive somehow, as though countless unseen eyes had opened the moment the lights disappeared. I left the town without looking back. But long after the buildings vanished into the fog, I kept wondering where all the people had gone, and whether they had ever truly been there at all. The highway eventually narrowed into an old forest road. Fallen branches littered the shoulders. Rain soaked everything beneath the gray sky. By evening, exhaustion forced me to stop. I found a small clearing beside the road and pitched a tent beneath the trees. The storm continued overhead. Water drummed against the fabric. The smell of wet pine filled the air. For a while, the familiar rhythm of rain felt comforting, almost peaceful. Then the footsteps began. Slow, measured, circling the campsite. Crunch, pause, crunch. The footsteps moved through wet leaves and mud, always remaining just beyond the tent. I sat upright, listening. The movement continued. One slow circle, then another. My throat tightened. Who's there? The words barely left my mouth. The footsteps stopped immediately. Silence swallowed the forest. Only rain remained. Several minutes passed. Nothing moved. Then the footsteps resumed, slowly circling once more. The pattern repeated. Every time I spoke, they stopped. Every time I remained quiet, they returned. The realization filled me with dread. Something was listening, waiting. A low growl drifted from deeper within the trees. The sound felt heavy, ancient, far larger than any animal I had ever encountered. The tent suddenly felt fragile, thin, worthless. Then something brushed against the fabric. A long scrape, gentle, curious. Claws dragged softly across the outside wall. The material trembled. My entire body froze. The scraping continued for several seconds, then stopped. The footsteps never returned after that. Morning arrived beneath cold gray clouds. The storm weakened slightly. I stepped outside. The clearing was empty. No animals. No people. Only giant tracks pressed deep into the mud surrounding the campsite. One complete circle. Then another. Then another. Whatever had walked around the tent during the night had been enormous, and it had spent hours deciding whether to come closer. The rain became worse the following day. Flooded roads blocked much of the route ahead. Water covered entire sections of pavement. Abandoned buildings appeared beside the highway. A forgotten town swallowed by rising floodwater. I left the car and continued on foot. Cold water reached my knees. Streetlights flickered weakly above submerged vehicles. Their reflections twisted across the dark surface. The air smelled of mud and decay. Every step stirred hidden debris beneath the water. Branches, glass, things I couldn't identify. Then something brushed against my leg. Softly, I stopped. The water settled. Nothing appeared beneath the surface. Only darkness. I continued walking. Several moments later, it happened again. A smooth shape sliding past my calf. Silent, deliberate. The cold fear arrived immediately. Something was moving beneath me, keeping pace. Watching. The flooded street stretched ahead. The pale glow of damaged streetlights barely illuminated the water. Then I saw it. A pale shape, drifting beneath the surface several feet away. Long, thin, human-like. It vanished the moment I focused on it. My heartbeat quickened. The thing brushed against my legs again, this time lingering slightly longer. I forced myself forward. Water rippled around me. The flooded buildings stood silent. Then a child's voice echoed through the rain. Hello. The voice came from a nearby school, a large brick building partially submerged by floodwater. Relief washed over me. Another person. Finally, I followed the voice inside. Dark hallways stretched beyond the entrance. Water covered the floors. Desks floated through empty classrooms. The voice called again. Soft, distant, yet every room stood empty. Every hallway abandoned. The child never appeared. The voice continued, leading me deeper into the building. Always just ahead. Always out of sight. Then it stopped. Without warning. Silence filled the school. Only dripping water remained. I left immediately. The pale thing followed beside me through the floodwater all the way back to the road, brushing softly against my legs, never attacking, never leaving, as though it simply wanted me to know it was there. By nightfall, I reached a fire watchtower overlooking miles of forest. The structure rose above the treetops like a lonely skeleton. Rain drifted across the mountains. Fog gathered in the valleys below. The tower appeared abandoned, yet a faint radio signal echoed from somewhere inside. I climbed the stairs, each step groaned beneath my weight. The wind carried the smell of wet wood and rust. At the top, I found a small observation room. An emergency radio sat on a dusty desk. Its speaker crackled softly. A recorded message repeated through bursts of static. Leave the forest immediately. The warning looped every 7 minutes. Exactly. Never early, never late. I listened to it 3 times. The words never changed. Night slowly settled across the mountains. Darkness swallowed the valley below. That was when the lights appeared. Small glowing points moving through the forest. Dozens of them, drifting silently between the trees. They moved with purpose, slowly gathering beneath the tower. The radio continued repeating its warning. 7 minutes. Again. 7 minutes. Again. Then the stairs shook. A vibration passed through the metal structure. Something had stepped onto the lower platform. The shaking came again. Higher now. Closer. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. The climb continued. 1 level at a time. The radio suddenly crackled. The warning stopped. Static filled the room. Then a familiar voice emerged. My voice. The exact sound of my own voice. Calm. Clear. Speaking through the speaker. I found the end of the road. The blood drained from my face. The recording continued. Words I had never spoken. Descriptions of places I had never seen. Yet the voice belonged to me. Below, the stairs shook again. The unseen climber had reached another level. The tower swayed slightly in the wind. The forest lights remained gathered beneath me, waiting, listening. The radio kept speaking in my voice. The footsteps kept climbing. And for the first time since entering the storm, I felt certain of one thing. Whatever waited at the end of these roads already knew my name, and it had known it long before I arrived. The storm greeted me again the following morning. Rain drifted across the highway. Fog clung to the forest floor like pale smoke. I left the ranger tower behind and continued deeper into the mountains. The road felt emptier than ever. No towns, no travelers, only trees, only rain. Near midday, I spotted movement beside the shoulder. A dog, thin and soaked. Its fur hung heavily against its body. It stood alone near the ditch, trembling beneath the rain. I slowed and pulled over. The animal didn't run. It simply watched as I opened the passenger door. Its brown eyes looked tired, almost relieved. After a moment, it climbed inside. The smell of wet fur filled the car. Water dripped onto the floor mats. I expected barking or nervous pacing. Instead, the dog curled into the seat and stared straight ahead, silent. Hours passed. The rain continued. The forest rolled by beyond the windows. The dog never barked once, not even when thunder shook the mountains. But I noticed something strange. Whenever the road curved beside dense woods, the animal would turn away. It refused to look toward the trees, as if something waited there, something it already knew. The afternoon faded into evening. Lightning flashed beyond the hills. Each burst of white light made the dog tremble harder. Its breathing became shallow. Its ears flattened. I reached over carefully. The animal flinched, not from me, from the darkness outside. Then another flash illuminated the forest. The dog whimpered, a low, desperate sound, the first noise it had made all day. Its eyes locked onto the rear window. The trembling became violent. I glanced into the mirror. Nothing. Only rain. Only fog. The dog continued staring. Frozen. Terrified. Slowly, it crawled beneath the passenger seat. Its body pressed tightly against the floor. The whimpering continued. Soft. Broken. I looked outside again. Lightning flashed one more time. And this time I saw them. A pair of glowing eyes standing among the trees, far from the road. Motionless. Watching. The eyes vanished when darkness returned. The dog refused to come out from beneath the seat for the rest of the night. Neither did I mention what I had seen, because deep down I knew the animal understood something I didn't, and whatever waited beyond those trees had frightened it long before I arrived. The glowing eyes remained in my thoughts long after sunrise. The storm had weakened slightly, yet the clouds never broke apart. Everything felt trapped beneath the same gray sky. Near evening, I heard something unusual, a distant noise drifting through the forest, low, rhythmic, almost like breathing. I parked beside the road and listened. The sound continued, somewhere beyond the trees. Curiosity overcame caution. I grabbed my flashlight and followed it. Rainwater soaked my boots. Branches brushed against my sleeves. The forest seemed older here. The air felt warmer despite the storm. Eventually I found the source, a cave entrance hidden behind thick brush. Warm air flowed from the opening, steady, like breath leaving enormous lungs. The sight immediately unsettled me, yet I stepped inside. The flashlight beam cut through darkness. Water dripped from the ceiling. The cave smelled of wet stone and something older, something buried. Strange symbols covered the walls, hundreds of them, carved deep into the rock. Some looked like circles. Others resembled twisted trees. Many had been worn smooth by time. The deeper I traveled, the warmer the cave became. Shallow pools of black water reflected the flashlight. Bones littered the ground. Animal bones, some large, some small, all scattered carelessly beside the pools. A growing unease settled inside me. The breathing sound had become louder now, closer. Each exhale stirred the still water. Each inhale seemed to pull air deeper into the cave. Then the passage widened. The darkness ahead became immense. The flashlight could no longer reach the far wall. I stopped walking. The breathing came from somewhere ahead. Something huge. Something alive. My hands tightened around the flashlight. Silence followed. A terrible silence. Then dozens of eyes opened, one after another, scattered throughout the darkness, reflecting pale light, watching, waiting. The flashlight trembled in my hand. More eyes appeared, then more, far too many to count. Different heights, different distances, all fixed upon me. The breathing continued, slow, ancient. The cave suddenly felt impossibly small. I backed away carefully. None of the eyes blinked. None moved. They simply watched, as though they had been waiting a very long time for someone to arrive. I left without turning my back. Even after reaching the forest again, I could still feel those countless eyes lingering in the darkness behind me, watching from deep beneath the mountain. Night returned with heavy rain. The highway shimmered beneath the headlights. Fog drifted across the pavement in pale waves. That was when I saw her, a woman walking alone along the shoulder. She wore a yellow raincoat. The hood covered her face completely. Water streamed from the fabric as she moved through the storm. I slowed beside her. The road felt too isolated to leave someone behind. She stopped immediately. Without a word, she opened the passenger door and climbed inside. The dog beneath the seat began trembling again. The woman never acknowledged it. Rainwater dripped from her coat onto the floor, yet the puddle beneath her feet continued growing, far larger than it should have. I drove in silence. The woman sat perfectly still. The hood never shifted. The face beneath remained hidden. Eventually she spoke. Her voice sounded soft, almost sad. These roads don't let people leave. The words lingered inside the car. Neither of us spoke again for several minutes. Rain tapped softly against the glass. The forest drifted past. Then she spoke once more. Most people realized too late. A chill moved through me. I glanced toward her. The hood remained lowered. The darkness beneath concealed everything. I looked back at the road, only for a second. When I turned again, the passenger seat was empty. The woman was gone. The door remained closed, locked. No movement disturbed the car. Only the growing puddle remained. Cold water spread across the floor mat. The dog whimpered quietly. I stopped the car and stepped outside. Rain soaked my clothes immediately. Mud covered the shoulder. Fresh footprints stretched away from the vehicle. wet impressions leading directly into the forest. They continued between the trees, far beyond the reach of my headlights. I never followed them, yet for miles afterward, I kept seeing flashes of yellow between the branches whenever lightning illuminated the woods. Always distant, always watching, as though she had never truly left the road at all. The forest swallowed the highway once again. Fog rolled between the trees. Rain drifted through the darkness. Near midnight, an old church emerged from the mist. Its steeple rose above the tree-line, weathered, crooked, half hidden by ivy. I stopped beside the gravel path leading to the entrance. Something about the building felt wrong, yet impossible to ignore. Candles glowed inside. Warm light flickered behind stained glass windows. The front door stood slightly open. I stepped inside. The smell of melted wax filled the air. Rows of candles burned near the altar. Their flames remained perfectly still despite the draft. The church was empty, or so it appeared. Thunder rumbled far beyond the forest. Then I heard singing, a distant choir, soft voices rising beneath the storm. The music seemed to come from somewhere below the floorboards. The sound drifted through the church like a memory, beautiful and deeply unsettling. Near the altar sat several neat rows of clothing, shirts, coats, shoes, all soaked from rain, carefully folded, waiting for owners who never returned. The choir continued singing. The notes echoed through the empty sanctuary. I followed the sound downstairs. A narrow staircase led into a basement. Cold air greeted me immediately. The smell of damp paper filled the darkness. Boxes lined the walls. Shelves leaned beneath years of dust. Then I found the photographs. Hundreds of them. Pictures of travelers, families, campers, drivers, people standing beside roads and forests. Many photographs looked decades old. Others appeared recent. All had one thing in common. Every person was missing. The names written beneath the photographs matched lists pinned to nearby boards. Missing travelers, missing hikers, missing strangers. The choir continued above me. Then it stopped. Instantly, every voice vanished at once. The silence felt crushing. The basement seemed darker now, the air colder. I slowly looked toward the staircase. For a moment, I had the overwhelming feeling that something was standing there, watching from the darkness, waiting. I left the church immediately. The candles still burned. The door still stood open, yet the choir never returned. Only silence followed me back into the storm. The mountain road climbed higher into the storm. Rain fell steadily from black clouds. Fog drifted across sharp turns and steep cliffs. Near midnight, a landslide blocked the road ahead. Mud and broken trees covered the pavement. There was no way through. I stopped the car and waited. The engine idled softly. The heater pushed warm air into the cabin. Outside, rain washed over the mountainside. The guardrail stood beside a steep drop. At first, I noticed only one pair of eyes, faint, reflective, watching from below the rail. I assumed it belonged to an animal. Then another pair appeared, and another, and another. Dozens of glowing eyes stared upward from the darkness. None blinked, none moved. The forest below remained hidden beneath fog. Only the eyes were visible, silent, patient, watching. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Minutes passed. The eyes remained exactly where they were. Then I heard rustling. Far below, branches shifting, wet leaves sliding across stone. The movement slowly climbed uphill. Closer, closer. The eyes never moved. Yet something approached from beneath them. Something large. The rustling continued. Steady, deliberate. The dog beneath the seat began trembling once again. Its quiet whimpers filled the car. Rain struck the roof harder. The forest seemed darker than before. Then the emergency lights suddenly died. Without warning, the flashing red glow vanished. Darkness swallowed the mountainside. The glowing eyes remained, brighter now, more numerous. The rustling had reached the edge of the road, just beyond the headlights, just beyond sight. I locked the doors and gripped the steering wheel. The dog pressed itself against my leg. Neither of us moved. Outside, countless eyes stared through the rain, waiting patiently in the darkness. And for the first time, I realized they weren't watching the road. They were watching me. The landslide left me stranded until dawn. By morning, the road remained blocked. Rain still drifted from low clouds. The forest stood silent beyond the mountains. A weathered bus stop appeared a short distance away. Its roof sagged beneath years of storms. The sign above it read, Black Hollow. I had never seen the town marked on any map. Still, when the bus arrived shortly after midnight the following night, I climbed aboard. The doors opened with a tired hiss. Warm air greeted me. The interior smelled faintly of wet fabric and old dust. Only a handful of passengers occupied the seats. Each sat perfectly still. No conversations. No movement. No phones. Nothing. The driver stared straight ahead. His hands remained fixed on the wheel. Rain streaked across every window. The forest blurred beyond the glass. I chose a seat near the middle and settled in. The bus pulled away immediately. No one acknowledged my presence. Minutes passed. The passengers remained motionless. Their reflections drifted through the dark windows like pale ghosts. Then one of them moved. A woman seated near the front slowly turned her head. Too far. Farther than seemed possible. Her neck continued twisting until she stared directly toward the rear of the bus. Toward me, her face remained expressionless. The movement stopped. The silence deepened. I looked away. The road stretched endlessly ahead. The storm continued. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the hills. Then I noticed something outside. A dead deer lay beside the road. Its body twisted unnaturally in the rain. The sight lasted only a moment before the forest swallowed it. 10 minutes later, I saw it again. The same deer, the same position, the same broken antlers. My stomach tightened. That wasn't possible. The bus never turned around. It never stopped. Yet somehow we had passed the same animal twice. Rainwater trickled down the glass. The passengers never reacted. Then I saw the deer a third time, exactly where it had been before, waiting beside the highway, as though the road itself had begun repeating. The driver continued forward. His expression never changed. The bus rolled deeper into darkness, and somewhere beyond the rain-streaked windows, I began to feel that Black Hollow was not a place the bus was traveling toward. It was a place it could never leave. I left the bus at dawn. The storm followed. As always, rain whispered through the trees while fog drifted across the forest floor. The road disappeared sometime, before evening. Soon I found myself wandering through unfamiliar woods. Every direction looked the same. Every path vanished beneath mud and roots. Night approached quickly. That was when I saw a faint light. A cabin, hidden among the trees. Warm yellow light glowed behind its windows. Relief washed through me, until I heard a voice. My name, softly spoken from inside. The cabin door had not even opened yet. Still, the voice knew my name. I stood frozen in the rain. Then the voice repeated it. Gentle, patient, waiting. Eventually I stepped inside. The air smelled of old wood and fireplace smoke. Photographs covered the walls. Dozens of them. Strangers standing inside the same room. Different decades. Different clothing. Yet the room never changed. Each photograph showed the exact cabin around me. Every face appeared uneasy, as though each person had arrived unexpectedly. The ticking of clocks filled the silence. I looked around. Clocks covered nearly every shelf and wall, but none agreed. Some moved quickly, others barely advanced. One clock ticked backward. The uneven rhythm created a strange pulse throughout the cabin. The voice returned, this time from beneath the floorboards. My name again, whispered from below. Slow, calm, almost affectionate. I knelt beside the floor. The wood felt cold beneath my hand. The whisper continued, just beneath the boards. Close enough to feel. Far too close. Outside something moved. Heavy footsteps circled the cabin. The ground trembled slightly. I looked through the window. Enormous footprints surrounded the building. Fresh impressions pressed deep into the mud. One complete circle. Then another. Then another. Whatever had made them was still walking. Still circling. The voice beneath the floor continued calling my name. The clocks continued ticking at different speeds. And deep down, I understood something that filled me with quiet dread. The cabin had been waiting for me, just as it had waited for everyone in those photographs. The forest eventually opened into a forgotten town. Most buildings stood empty, windows broken, paint peeling from weathered walls. A rusted water tower rose above everything else. Its silhouette vanished into low clouds. Rain drifted steadily through the darkness. As I crossed the town square, lightning flashed. A figure stood atop the water tower, watching. The distance made details impossible to see, yet something about its shape felt deeply wrong. Another flash illuminated the tower. Long limbs wrapped around the metal framework. Arms and legs stretched impossibly far. The creature clung to the structure like an enormous spider. Then darkness returned. Thunder rolled overhead. When the next flash came, the figure was gone. The top of the tower stood empty. I searched the streets, the rooftops, the alleys. Nothing. No movement. No sign of where it had gone. Later, I found an elderly resident sitting beneath a covered porch. Rainwater dripped from the roof beside him. His eyes remained fixed on the tower. When I asked about it, his expression darkened. "Don't stay after midnight." That was all he said. Nothing more. Night settled across the town. The streets emptied completely. Fog drifted between abandoned buildings. At exactly 4 in the morning, tapping began overhead. Tap, 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 slow, measured, moving across the roof above me. The same careful rhythm I remembered from the car long ago. I remained perfectly still, listening. The tapping continued, crossing from one end of the roof to the other, heavy enough to bend old wood slightly. Yet whatever walked above never revealed itself. Dawn eventually arrived. The tapping stopped. The tower remained visible through the mist, silent, watching. And every time I looked toward its rusted silhouette, I felt certain that something high above was still looking back. The road vanished completely after the forgotten town. Only forest remained, miles upon miles of rain-soaked wilderness. The storm had become part of the landscape, a permanent presence. The trees stood taller here, older, their roots twisted through black mud like veins beneath skin. Night arrived before I found shelter. I sat beneath a rocky overhang and listened to the rain. At first, everything seemed normal. Then the forest inhaled. The movement was subtle, almost impossible to notice. Branches shifted together. Leaves trembled. The ground seemed to rise slightly. Then came the exhale, a slow release. The entire forest moved as one. My breath caught. The motion repeated. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The trees were breathing. A deep vibration traveled through the soil. Roots shifted beneath the mud, not growing, moving, like living muscles beneath skin. The earth rippled gently around them. The sight filled me with cold awe. Rainwater flowed through shallow channels that now resembled veins. The entire forest appeared connected, alive, a colossal organism stretching far beyond the horizon. Then something moved beneath the ground. Far below, massive, ancient, the motion rolled beneath the forest like a whale beneath dark water. Trees swayed. Mud trembled. Roots shifted around me. The scale of it defied understanding. Whatever existed beneath the earth was larger than any creature I could imagine, larger than mountains, larger than the roads themselves. The realization arrived slowly. Every strange place, every abandoned road, every impossible encounter, they all belonged here, inside something living, something old beyond measure. The forest breathed again. The ground rose gently beneath me. For the first time, I stopped searching for explanations. I simply listened. Rain, breath, roots, and the slow heartbeat of something vast sleeping beneath the world. Days passed, or perhaps weeks. Time no longer felt reliable beneath the endless storm. The highway eventually returned. A single road cutting through fog and darkness. I followed it without question, without destination, without hope of finding anything familiar. Then one evening, the road ended. Abruptly, a cliff overlooked a vast expanse of black water. The sea stretched endlessly beneath gray skies. No map had ever shown this place. No signs marked its existence. Only silence, only rain, Broken vehicles littered the shoreline far below. Cars, trucks, buses, hundreds of them, some ancient, some recent, all abandoned. The fog drifted slowly across the water, and standing near its edge was a figure. The same figure from mile marker 14, the one that had watched from roadsides, from forests, from distant shadows, the one that had followed since the beginning. Rain poured over its motionless form. For a long time, neither of us moved. Then it stepped forward, into the pale light. I finally saw it clearly. Its shape seemed wrong in ways my mind struggled to understand. Too tall, too thin. Its limbs stretched unnaturally. Its face remained hidden beneath shifting shadows. Yet none of that frightened me anymore, because in that moment, I finally understood. The roads had never been leading away from something. They had been leading here. Every traveler, every missing photograph, every abandoned vehicle, every warning, all of them ended at the same place. The figure stood quietly beside the black water, waiting, not hunting, not chasing, waiting, as though it had performed this task for centuries. The rain softened, the fog thickened, the distant shoreline disappeared. I looked back toward the highway. The forest stood motionless beneath gray skies, breathing quietly, watching. Then I looked forward once more. The figure had not moved. Neither had the sea. The world felt strangely calm. The fear had faded. Only understanding remained. Some roads do not connect places. Some roads connect endings. The rain continued falling. The fog drifted across the water and beyond the edge of the world. With a black seam at the pale horizon, I sat in silence beside the final road, listening to the storm, listening to the forest breathe, and knowing that nobody had ever truly left these roads. They had only reached the place where all roads eventually end,